Mark's Gospel, chapter number 8. Jesus now feeds 4,000 people. The Pharisees come demanding miraculous signs. Jesus points out the insidious sins of the Pharisees and of Herod. He heals another blind man, and Peter recognises an extremely important truth about the person of Jesus. About this time, another large crowd gathered, and the people ran out of food again. Jesus called his disciples and told them, "I feel sorry for these people. They've been with me for 3 days and they've nothing left to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will faint on the way, for some of them have come a long distance." His disciples replied, "How are we supposed to find food for them out here in the wilderness?" Jesus asked, "How much bread do you have?" 7 loaves, they said. So Jesus told them all to sit down on the ground. He took the 7 loaves, thanked God for them, and broke them into pieces. He gave them to his disciples, who distributed the bread to the crowd. A few small fish were found too, so Jesus also blessed these and told his disciples to distribute them. They ate as much as they wanted. Afterwards, the disciples picked up 7 large baskets of leftover food. There were about 4,000 people in the crowd that day, and Jesus sent them home after they'd eaten. Immediately after this, he got into a boat with his disciples and crossed over to the region of Dalmanutha. When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had arrived, they came and started to argue with him. Testing him, they demanded that he showed them a miraculous sign from heaven to prove his authority. When he heard this, he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why do these people keep demanding miraculous signs? I tell you the truth, I will not give this generation any such sign." So he got back into the boat and left them, and he crossed the lake over to the other side. But the disciples had forgotten to bring any food. They had only 1 loaf of bread with them in the boat, and as they were crossing the lake, Jesus warned them, "Watch out! Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod." At this, they began to argue, each of them, because they hadn't brought any bread. Jesus knew what they were saying, so he said, "Why are you arguing about bringing bread and having none? Don't you know, or do you not even understand yet? Are your hearts too hard to take it in? You have eyes, can't you see? You have ears, can't you hear? Don't you remember anything at all? When I fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves of bread, how many baskets of leftover food did you pick up afterwards?" 12, they said. "And when I fed 4,000 with 7 loaves, how many large baskets of leftover did you pick up?" 7, they said. "Don't you understand yet?" he asked them. When he arrived at Bethsaida, some people brought him a blind man to Jesus, and they begged him to touch the man and heal him. Jesus took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. Then, spitting on the man's eyes, he laid hands on him and asked, "Can you see anything now?" The man looked round. "Yes, I see people, but I can't see them very clearly. They look like trees walking around." Then Jesus placed his hand in the man's eyes again, and his eyes were opened. His sight was completely restored, and he could see everything clearly. Jesus sent him away, saying, "Don't go back into the village on your way home." Jesus and his disciples left Galilee and went to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. As they were walking along, he asked them, "Who do people say that I am?" "Well," they replied, "some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, others say you're one of the other great prophets." Then he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Jesus asked. Peter replied, "You are the Messiah." But Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. Then Jesus began to tell them about the Son of Man must suffer terrible things and be rejected by the elders and leading priests and the teachers of the religious law. He would be killed, but 3 days later he would rise from the dead. He talked about this openly with his disciples. Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Jesus turned round and looked at his disciples. Then he reprimanded Peter. "Get away from me, Satan," he said. "You see things from merely a human standpoint, not from God." Then, calling the crowd to join his disciples, he said, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must turn from your selfish ways, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you'll lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake and for the sake of the good news, you will save it. And what benefit will it gain you if you get the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your own soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my message in these adulterous and sinful days, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he returns in glory of his Father with many angels.